When I was in high school, I was around 16 years old. I had a friend named Lisa and a second friend named Zoe. Lisa had a lot of money, and her huge house was located right next to our high school. This meant that basically every time we had a break or anything like that, the three of us would head over there. We would also have a lot of sleepovers at her house. It was this huge rich people house, so it was pretty awesome to get to stay there. One day, we decided to stay the night there. The three of us plus Lisa's little sister Anna. Their mother was gone for the night. We decided to put on some PJs and watch scary movies for hours. Anna went to bed before us three, and we stayed in the living room watching TV. At one point, the alarm went on. It happens sometimes. Lisa went to go turn it off, and that was about it. Only a short 10 minutes later, the alarm suddenly went off again. This scared us because it was not supposed to go off that often. Technically, the alarm was made to ring only when humans came by. But because the house was located in the middle of the forest, we all knew that sometimes animals would wander by, and this had happened many times before. When the alarm was installed, we tried to calibrate it as much as possible for humans only. This was the second time it rang. We started to get a little bit scared. We went upstairs and opened the windows to look in the garden all around the house. We saw nothing. We even went onto the balcony in the middle of the night, but we still couldn't find anything. I was alone on the balcony at some point when the alarm went on again. The automatic lights around the swimming pool suddenly turned on. That meant something was in the pool, and I was just above it. I got so scared, I got down on my knees and stayed there until my friend deactivated the alarm and the lights. I ran inside the house. At this point, we were really scared and started thinking about what it could possibly be that was setting the alarm off. If it was a human being, all our lights were on, so they must know where we were. We turned all the lights off, and all four of us went into hiding downstairs in the kitchen without taking our phones with us. I don't even know why not even one of us thought to bring them. There we were, lights off, scared in this huge house, with windows everywhere we could look. The alarm went berserk again. Anna screamed. Lisa took her with her, reassuring her while walking to shut the alarm off, like turn it off once and for all. I was there in the kitchen with Zoe only, and we were looking all around us. The alarm was upstairs, so the other two were quite far away from us. At some point, we could hear footsteps right beside us, right on the other side of the wall in the garden. It was fast, not scared, just fast, like this person knew exactly where they were going. We just froze, waiting in the dark, and jumped when someone, it was obvious, walked by the door right in front of us. He had a light with him, but it was another light that allowed us to see his silhouette, so there must have been at least two, running all around the house for about 20 to 30 minutes. This door was, like I said, a windowed door. We were still doing our best not to move so they wouldn't see us. The girls upstairs were so scared by the alarm that they froze there. At least that's what they told us. Suddenly, we heard a voice, then a second one. I was unable to understand anything they were saying, but I could hear that they were talking. Zoe and I were blinded by a sudden light shining right at our faces. We were frozen, literally not able to move, scream, talk. Not anything we could have done was possible, since we were stuck in fear. The light stayed there. Someone was seeing us through the blinds. Someone was watching us being scared and was just standing there. Suddenly, we heard a harsh sound on the front door, which was closed. Zoe didn't move at all, but I don't know what took over me. It just woke me up. I crawled over to the door in front of me, the back door. I closed the blinds and held the door in place, just in case the guy on the other side tried to force it. Honestly, I'm very small and thin. My little body was probably useless here, but I wanted to do what I could anyway. The one at the front door was still trying to break in, Zoe still not moving, the two girls upstairs doing I don't know what, and the one just in front of the glass window away from me started to hit it, trying to force it open. It was closed, but I grabbed the handle and hung in there for a while. He was just smacking at the door trying to open it. All of this lasted for hours in my head, but it must have been only a few seconds. Very abruptly, the hits at the front door stopped. A few seconds later, the ones in front of me stopped as well. Then the lights just kept zipping around everywhere. The alarm did nothing, so it must have been disabled as they'd wanted to do. After this, we were so scared that Zoe and I fell asleep in the kitchen, and the two sisters upstairs. Nothing happened for the rest of the night. It seemed it was all over. The next day, Lisa and Anna's mom came back home. We told her everything. We got yelled at a bit because we didn't call the cops. I took it the wrong way at the time, but I understand now why she got so upset. She called the cops instead, who went to see the house and discovered footsteps all around it, some muddy boot prints on the front door as well. That was about it. They told us it must have been some guys who were just doing some recon. You know, when they walk around the houses to see how to rob it. Apparently it was very common in this area, since there were a lot of really big and beautiful houses filled with expensive things. The only thing I'll never be able to explain is why they suddenly started being so aggressive. Originally, they were just walking around the house looking, but I think if they were trying to see something or just look things up, they would have left immediately when they realized we were inside, right? Or at least left when that guy saw us in the kitchen. Well, they didn't. Instead, the moment they saw us, they started being hyper-aggressive and trying to force the doors open to enter the house where we were. I don't know if they really wanted to rob the place. I never will, and honestly, I don't want to know what they wanted. I didn't spend any more nights at this house after. I was too scared they would come back again, so I could never fall asleep there. Lisa got a bit mad like she didn't understand. But from what she told Zoe and I guess she never saw the people. She just stayed upstairs with her sister. So I can understand why she doesn't understand how I feel. This happened during summer vacation when I was 11 years old. Me and my parents always go to South India for at least 1 month to visit our family. During the whole month of June, there is what we'll call in our little village the Mango Festival, or Mangani Festival. It's a religious festival where divinity statues are exhibited in big parades. There's also a large alley filled all along it with small temporary stands where people can buy lots of different things like street food, fruits, toys, clothes, and even more at very cheap prices. My mom and I always go to these little stores in the evening at about 5 or 6 when it's already dark. Going during daytime is just too exhausting with the unbearable heat plus the huge crowds. At that time, the alley is still very bright and lightened by the stores and decorative lights. This day, my mom decided to stop at a shoe/flip-flop stand to buy me some pairs. The seller proceeded to show my mom the collections. When he noticed my presence, though, he locked his eyes on me immediately. At the beginning, it didn't bother me very much. I just thought I might look like someone he knew or something, but he just kept staring at me the entire time. He knew exactly the right time to stare, too. Whenever my mom was looking at my direction, he would stop right away. Then when she looked away, he would start looking at me again. It was very obvious at this point, and it made me uncomfortable. Eventually, we had to leave without buying anything, but the seller insisted we come again tomorrow because he'd have a new shipment or whatever new collections were arriving. About 2 days after, my mom called me to go to the festival stands once again. I was reluctant to go with her this time. I told her I was genuinely tired and didn't want to go, but she yelled at me, saying I was always being lazy and wasting my summer vacation, staying at home all day. So I went with her. Our first stop was at the cheap jewelry store. Then my mom made me do something I always hated, but she would do all the time in order to help me with my shyness. Here, take my purse and go to the shoe stand by yourself. Buy a pair that you like. I'll be watching from here. I refused at first, but she progressively raised her voice. To avoid being humiliated in front of other kids, I did what she said. When the man saw me approaching his stand, he welcomed me with the most unsettling smile. He proceeded to show all of the new sandals as I was his only customer. He even took the time to put the sandals on me one by one, asking if they fit well. At this point, I just took whatever freaking shoes as quickly as possible to get out of there. Now was the time for the checkout. I was, and still am really, stressed to order or talk to a vendor. I used to stutter a lot during these social situations, but this time was completely different. It was not only stress, but there was also this underlying fear, this gut feeling, saying this man was too strange and I should not be here with him alone. I handed him the money and was waiting for my change. His demeanor suddenly completely changed. He became very fidgety and showed frustration over the cash register. He then said that it had broken for some unknown reason and would not open anymore. I glanced outside to see if my mom was still watching me. She was still observing. When we made eye contact, she made a gesture with her hand, telling me to hurry. She was observing at an angle, and as I was next to the cash register at the corner, I could not see her properly anymore. At the same time, the seller told me he had another register in his trailer. He then took my money and went inside. It was sort of an open shop, so you could see his trailer if you were right in front of it. He went inside for a long time. I could hear the voices of other people inside. They were talking, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. For another 10 minutes, I was just standing there, waiting awkwardly and peeking back at my mom occasionally to notify her of my presence at the checkout. Then another client entered the shop. She was looking at the merchandise when she asked me where the vendor was. I told her he was in the trailer. At the sound of our conversation, the vendor peeked out of the window and said to the woman, "We don't take any more clients, ma'am. We're closing very soon." The woman left shortly thereafter. It seemed strange to me that he decided to close so suddenly and so early. It was only about 6 p.m., and usually everything closes around 8 or even late 9s. I couldn't leave yet, though. I still had to get my change back. The vendor peeked from his trailer window and said he'd finally managed to get my change. He then made a sign with his hand and told me to come inside. I was unsure about what he wanted, so instead I said nothing and waited there awkwardly. After a short moment, he peeked back out. "You can come in now, you know." I was confused. Why couldn't he just come outside and give me my change back? Why the hell did he take so much time, too? I didn't say anything. Instead, I peeked outside to my mom. When she saw my concerned face, she decided to finally come and help me. Actually, I'm waiting for my mom to come. When my mother entered the shop, the seller left the trailer almost immediately and handed my change back right away. He didn't seem frustrated anymore. Instead, he was smiling and very talkative. He even asked my mom if we were from here, to which she responded that we were from France and spending a summer vacation in our hometown. My mom and I continued to go around to the other shops, but I could still see other clients coming into that shoe store, even though he just said he was going to close soon. By the time my mom finished her shopping, it was 8 p.m., and on our way back, I could still see the lights inside. When we got closer, I could even see he was using the same cash register that was supposedly broken. At that age, I didn't quite realize how creepy the whole thing was. It just seemed sort of odd and awkward. Years later, though, I finally realized that his gaze, his behavior, his touches were also wrong. That night, I bet his intentions were of the worst variety. Luckily, though, that was the last time I ever saw him. During the festival the following year, I couldn't find his stand anywhere. Instead, the slot was occupied by a street food stand. I apologize in advance since I'm not a very good writer, but I'll do my best to share my experience. To better paint the picture, here's a description of myself at the time of this incident, which was 3 years ago. I was 5'5", a 26-year-old woman, medium length bleach blonde hair, curvy, 175 pounds, wearing black high-waisted tights and a pink crop top. 3 years ago, I was walking home late at night from my friend's house. It was dark, and at the time I lived in a rough part of a large city. Now, I've had many sketchy situations that I've gotten myself out of, so I guess I sort of felt invincible, like nothing truly scary could ever happen to me. After all, when I walk alone, I always stay very alert and aware of my surroundings, for my own safety, just in case. About halfway home and roughly 10 minutes from my apartment, I noticed a van had started tailing me. I was used to this since in my city, it's very common for a young woman in a rough area to get propositioned for sex. It's sort of embarrassing how desensitized to that sort of thing I was. I did my usual and crossed the road so that I would be walking beside the traffic heading in the other direction. I wasn't scared or anything, I was just really annoyed instead. The van then turned down a side street, then back onto the road I was on and pulled up alongside me. At this point, I still wasn't scared yet. Again, this had happened to me so many times it never even mattered if I was wearing something that showed skin or not. Even if I was wearing a winter coat zipped from just below my chin all the way down to my ankles, well, this area was just notorious for that type of activity. This time, I decided to be quite firm and told the person very sternly, I'm not interested. I noticed then that there were two men in the van. They looked almost identical to each other, and may have actually been twins or even brothers. Both men had a very, very dark complexion, dark eyes, and short dark hair. The van didn't move away from me though. I was super annoyed and crossed the road again to get away. At this point, I figured that would be enough for them to stop following me. Only they didn't. They kept circling back every time I crossed the road. I had never had to put that much effort into getting a horny pervert to leave me alone, so this is when I started feeling unsafe. They zipped by me at the speed traffic was flowing in, and I yelled at them to fuck off. When they didn't come back for a while, I thought it had finally worked. It had been 3 minutes almost and I hadn't seen the van again, so I thought I must be in the clear. Just in case though, I pulled my phone out and started getting ready to call my sister who I lived with. Just then, the van pulled up right alongside me extremely quickly, and before I could even blink, one of them jumped out of the van. He shoved open the back door and approached me in an aggressive manner, as if he was about to scoop me up and throw me in there. The traffic in that area was very inconsistent. It was dead at this time, and I imagined that's exactly what they were waiting for. Just as the man was about to grab me, I tilted my phone and said this, "You're being filmed in my live video chat. I gave my friend your license plate number, and the police have already been notified." I was so scared in that moment, but I never let it show. Instead, I stayed as calm as I possibly could. The man paused, as if he was considering whether I was bluffing or telling the truth. I tilted the phone a bit more, as to give the fake audience a better look at him. He jumped into the van, and they sped off right away. I've never been the same since that night. I'm afraid of walking alone now, even in the daytime. Stay safe out there. About 10 years ago, when I was still in my early 20s, I worked in a restaurant/bar establishment that was primarily staffed by young females. Not Hooters, but it was a similar concept. One especially slow afternoon, a few of us were hanging out in the office with one of our managers when the phone rang. She answered with a smile and cheerily recited our standard greeting before asking, "How can I help you today?" After a few seconds though, the smile completely disappeared from her face. She asked in a startled tone, "Excuse me?" The panic in her voice caught the attention of the rest of us in the office, and we instantly shut up. We watched as she sat in open-mouthed silence, her face getting more and more pale before she wordlessly hung up. She turned to us and shakily said, "We need to get everyone out, now." Apparently, when she'd answered, a man on the other end told her, "You're all going to die, you bitches." That's when the "excuse me" was asked. Afterwards, he told her he was going to blow the entire place up because we were all horrible, stuck-up bitches. We collected the rest of the staff, needless to say, got the few customers who were present out as well, and all walked across the street to the movie theater, where our manager called the police. A whole fleet of cops arrived. The building was searched for any sign of explosives. Statements were taken as well, and they stayed for several hours waiting for anyone to show up with bombs, which never happened. By the end of it, it was all declared a prank call. The police filed a report, though, and management decided to close for the rest of the night, just to be safe. One manager went back to check the caller ID, but whoever had done it had blocked the number right away. We were all on edge for our shifts for a few days afterward, but it eventually passed by and we thought that would be the end of it, until about a month later. I was on my shift when the phone rang. I answered, prepared to take a to-go order, but as soon as the "how can I help you" left my lips, a string of profanity was screamed into my ear. It was just screaming incoherently at the top of his lungs into the phone. It was hard to make out exactly what he was saying. Something about how I was a stuck-up whore, a bitch, lots of F-bombs sprinkled in as well. The string of profanities lasted about 30 seconds. I was too startled, really, to hang up right away. Then, as abruptly as all the screaming had begun, the other end went silent, and he was now gone. I went to the manager and told him what happened. I was asked if he'd made any threats again. I said no, but for some reason, he was really mad at me in particular. The decision was made to not evacuate this time, since no threats had been made. This pattern continued until the establishment eventually went out of business 2 years later. One of us would pick up the phone to an angry berating of our character. Sometimes we wouldn't hear anything from him for a month or two. Other times he'd call every day for a week straight before suddenly disappearing again. Occasionally, he would call back to back for hours on end, too. Eventually, we all got able to laugh about it. The lucky girl who would get the call would hang up and say something like, "Sorry, just my boyfriend calling to say how much he adores me." If a new hire answered and told us about it in shocked horror, we were just kind of like, "Oh yeah, by the way, that's a thing that happens. You get used to it." The number was always blocked, and we never did find out who it was in the end. We decided at one point collectively it must have been a customer that got rejected by one of the girls or something, and just didn't take it well.